the school board in public for the purpose of conducting the school corporation's business and is not considered a public community meeting. There will be time for public participation on agenda items as indicated on the agenda. If you would like to address the board, just make sure you fill out a yellow card and get that to Mrs. Warren as soon as possible before you speak. Welcome, everybody. I know some of you are here with a purpose, and we're excited to see what's going to be of all of this. I don't think we've ever had props in a board meeting before, so I'm really excited to see. I feel like it's going to be a great thing. So welcome. You are welcome to all of our meetings. And with that, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item up is good things, which this evening is brought to us by the junior high. Mrs. McEachran, do you have anything for us?
Yes, well, thank you for having us. It's always our pleasure to be here. And yes, we brought something a little different tonight, but I think it's going to be very entertaining and exciting. I want to first introduce Mrs. Kristen Weatherholt and Mrs. Heather Shaner. They are both championing our spring or winterish play. And so without further ado, I'm going to let them take it over.
Well, thank you so much for having us today. Heather and I have been doing drama together for a really long time and have really enjoyed it. This is show week for us, so we're all feeling a little stressed but very excited because they have done a great job preparing, and we want to share with you a small portion of the play that we're going to perform later this week. And so we're going to let the girls introduce themselves and tell what part you're playing, and then we'll give you a quick synopsis so you can kind of know what's happening in the scene.
And then we'll give you a little information about the show, when it is, and how you can get there if you want to. Just want to come up and give the little synopsis and let them know who you are. Yes.
So the play is The Wicked Witch has finally been caught and hauled into the court of Once Upon a Time to stand trial. She's accused of casting a spell on Sleeping Beauty, attempting to poison Snow White, kidnapping Rapunzel, and trying to eat Hansel. Red Riding Hood heads up the prosecution with the evil stepmother of Cinderella fame serving as the defense attorney. The judge, none other than the fairy godmother. The Wicked Witch's alleged victims are witnesses for the prosecution, along with the ever-popular Prince Charming. I'm the evil stepmother. I'm Little Red. I'm the Wicked Witch. I'm Cinderella's evil stepsister. I'm the judge and the fairy godmother.
I'm Cinderella's other evil stepsister.
You guys want to go ahead and get set for your scene?
So the scene that they're doing, the defense attorney has called. Yep. Yeah, the defense attorney. Yep. She has called her daughters to come and testify on behalf of the Wicked Witch. And so you take it away.
Now, girls, this is a courtroom. Remember, proper decorum must be maintained. Say hello to the fairy godmother.
Why? She wrecked our chances with Prince Charming.
As we've seen, that's probably for the best.
Says you. Stepmother, just get on with the questioning.
Very well, Your Honor. Now, girls, have you ever seen the defendant before?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Lots of times. Where was this?
Charm school.
Your Honor, was the defendant expected to lead the Wicked Witch as a head of charm school?
I resent that. I'm as charming as they come. The court will not tolerate these kinds of outbursts.
My client did not attend the charm school. She ran it.
She was our teacher.
Hi, Teach. Now, girls, I'm going to show you a series of dates where supposed crimes would have occurred.
Yeah.
Try to think if you're in school on any of these dates.
Hey, I can't read it.
Oh, well, your big hand's in the way.
Wait your turn. She gave it to me.
Mother!
Girls, don't fight.
Give it back.
No!
I said, give it back.
Make me.
Girls.
Why?
You.
Brat!
Girls. Obviously, the Wicked Witch didn't teach you anything at that charm school.
We can cast the best charms.
Wicked Witch an alibi?
Yeah, sure. She was with us.
On each one of those dates in question?
Yup, you got it.
Your witness.
Did you think hard tonight, right, Mom?
We'll talk about it later, girls.
You promised.
All right, ladies, let's be quiet now so the prosecuting attorney can ask the questions.
Ladies.
She called us ladies.
Isabella and Desmona.
Ladies, it's Izzy.
And Desi.
Alright then, Desi and Desi. You claim the Wicked Witch ran a town school. Where was this town school?
The Enchanted Forest.
The
The Emerald City.
Actually, it was the Enchanted Forest just outside the Emerald City.
As anyone in this time knows, there is no enchanted forest within 100 miles of the Emerald City.
Well, it kind of felt like an enchanted forest.
But it was in the Emerald City.
Controlled by the Wizard of Oz.
Well, no. It was a different Emerald City.
What other Emerald City is there?
The one where it rains a lot.
Izzy, Desi, you're lying, aren't you?
Us? Lie?
She got a low opinion of us.
Help me out then, and tell the truth for a change.
Oh. For a change? I like that.
Alright then, how many students attend the Wicked Witch's town school?
I don't know, maybe 10, 15.
100.
1,800?
Well, if you count the night students.
And all these students came to learn how to cast spells and charms.
Yeah, she has a big book there.
Giant book of spells.
Never got past chapter 3, though.
Give me one ingredient needed for love potion number 8.
Well, Ianute.
Wrong, that's love potion number 10.
Your Honor.
This is preposterous.
Alright, let's go with the question.
Ezzy, what are the words that will turn a frog into a rabbit?
Well,
Come on.
let me think. Hippity, bippity, ribbity, ruzz, kamito, buzzito, zippity buzz.
Wrong, it's Kamito Bazucho. Bazucho turns a frog into a mosquito.
Your Honor, she's splitting hairs.
Okay, well, then this has to get wrapped up.
Desi, at what time of day do you cast a spell that will blow every rose of a garden or some living things?
Rose garden.
Gosh, the sun is bright. Draw the blinds to cut out the light.
Oh, the first light of dawn.
Your Honor, the defendant cheated. I didn't hear anyone cheat.
I just made a simple request.
Well, are there any questions?
One more, Your Honor. You claim the Wicked Witch was in class at the exact time these other events were going on?
What other events?
Your Honor, your witness.
Okay, so on this Thursday at 6:30, you can come see it at the junior high in the cafeteria. It's $5 to get in. And for the board, if you can't come on Thursday, we also have it Friday morning at the same place.
At 8:15 and 10 o'clock.
8:15 or 10 o'clock.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. You guys, you are welcome to stay for the rest of the board meeting, or you can head out and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, ladies. Good luck. Are there any yellow cards? That brings us to the consent agenda, which this evening includes minutes from 1/23/23, executive minutes from 1/23/23, board workshop minutes from 1/23/23, accounts payable claims, payroll distribution summary report, human resource report, and conference requests.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions? I'm gonna make a little comment. Sorry I didn't do this earlier. Mr. Malooly is joining us remotely this evening. So the voting will look a little different, just so we can make sure everybody knows who's doing what. So just a little side note there. Thank you, Mr. Malooly. So Tim Yoder,
Yay. Yes. Voted yes.
Mike Malooly,
Yes.
Tara Towner,
Yes.
Jennifer Davis.
Yes.
Myself, Cammy Waite, yes. Okay, very good. That brings us to 4.1, a report on community schools grant. Dr. Kendall.
So, board, we wanted to give you a little update if you haven't heard already, but we were awarded the full service community schools grant. And what that looks like, it's too soon to tell because we have quite a bit of planning, but I did want to give you guys an overview of the pipeline services that it falls into. When I reported on it first, it was, again, ideas, and so we're gonna work with Westside and Southside because those are the two schools that these funds will go towards. And like I said, we have quite a bit of planning to do, but it'll be focused on high quality in and out of school programming, family and community engagement, early childhood development, social health, nutrition, and mental health services, and transitions from students going from elementary to our intermediate. So there's quite a bit of planning that needs to take place. The grant encompasses 5 years. So we, within this funding, will hire 2 coordinators, one for both schools that will oversee implementation. So we look to have more information soon, but there's lots to be done. Exciting for those schools.
When you say hire coordinators, are they already existing employees that we're hoping, or you are wanting to get new employees?
So these will be new employees. It'll be a full-time position. So they'll be compensated as such. And so if we have this programming going like we want it to be, it'll be a full-time job responsibility. So it won't pull from teachers per se in the district. It'll be separate.
And after 5 years, the school corporation would need to decide whether we want to absorb those positions after the grant won't pay for them, or?
Right, and hopefully by then we have the systems in play where they naturally just fit into the schools and you don't necessarily need somebody facilitating implementation so rigorously.
There is an opportunity for it to be extended past the 5 years, correct?
And the clock starts ticking on the 1st of January, 2023.
So it started ticking, yeah, on January 2023. We haven't been given the budgets yet. We have a big meeting about it tomorrow, but as soon as we get the budgets, then we'll be able to start advertising for those positions.
Because we're partnering with Elkhart Community.
Yeah, every school within this grant will have their own coordinator. So we are partnering, but there are parts that'll be separate.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Kendall. 4.2, school safety update, Chief Riddle.
No.
Good evening. Alrighty, so little update with CCS PD. When I came on as chief, my police background with South Bend and the time I've been here, I wanted to become a police department that was going to be a little bit more case driven. And for the calendar year of 22, we did 135 police cases. Now that doesn't mean that we're, every case that child is going to JDC and then being incarcerated. Those cases include a lot of paperwork that goes to the prosecutor's office in order to get that child or that student services that the prosecutor's office could offer them in the event that they come into contact with us, whether it's not a criminal offense or something we just do paperwork on and send it up to the prosecutor's office. Our daily audits. Oh yes, the strategic plan with CCSPD. We will conduct safety audits focused on making sure classroom doors and exterior doors are locked enclosed, as well as monitoring buildings for safety concerns or elements that are out of place, along with building positive connections with the students and staff. And if any of you have seen any of our posts on social media, you can definitely tell that Eric and Al are doing their part building relationships with the kids in our schools. They're doing an outstanding job, and I appreciate their effort. Al's scenarios. Again, when I became chief, I really wanted to kind of take our Alice scenarios to a level where we challenge ourselves each and every single time so that we can be prepared for the event that we may need an Alice alert in one of our buildings. And I've had nothing but positive feedback from the principals in all the buildings, and I will continue to do so, stretching their imagination or their comfort zones when it comes to practicing these Alice scenarios, so that we can be prepared in the event that we do need to go into an Alice alert. Reunification. This has been a huge lift, and I really have to thank Dr. Kendall for her support on this. Again, when I became chief, one of the first schools that I went to, reunification was a huge part of it. And as I've mentioned before, we're going to use the blueprint for the I Love You Guys Foundation as part of the stencil that we're going to make our reunification plan with Concord. More specifically, 2 offsite reunification plans. Some of the roles that are part of this reunification plan will be the incident commander, and that is Dr. Kendall. The law enforcement support will be Mr. Funston. The logistics and operations chief will be Jeff Phillips, along with the food, technology, and the communications that'll be needed for such a heavy lift. The staging manager will be Stephen Boyer, with the parent check-in as the director, as the parents come in and check in at our sites. The student assembly director is Kent Myers. He'll be in charge of the reunifiers, the victim advocates, the counselors, and the social workers. So again, we've just finished our 3rd meeting. We plan to have a 4th, and hopefully sometime after the spring break, I would like to get to the reunification sites and with our reunification team, and actually kind of put the meat and potatoes to it as to what we're going to do in each building. The 2-channel system, radio system, I thought was a kind of a pretty significant thing to go to when I became chief. There was just a lot of radio traffic as the old radio system was, and when we heard a lot of the transportation radio traffic on that one channel, I felt it was a pretty significant thing we needed to do as to go to a 2-channel system, and that way we can have an uninterrupted channel of communication in the event that we need to call CCS PD to an event, and just a borderline communication that's needed for everyday activities between school activities and CCS PD. That, and also I got a lot of good feedback from the transportation department. They have their own channel, and they're able to communicate on their own channel by themselves, which helps them. Updated emergency procedures. Okay. In the response to the concerns about the complexity of our previous safety poster verbiage following the incident at Concord Mall in November, we received the Concord Schools emergency procedures. Simplifying these procedures ensure a quicker response, letting CCSPD make sure buildings are secure and safe. While working with local law enforcement agencies, the newer poster simplifies and focuses to lockout and Alice alert. The SOP, the standard operating procedures, it's something I'm putting together that will give us a more definition as to the operating procedures for CCSPD, and we will seek for approval with the board once it is completed this school year. The coalition, that is a coalition amongst all SROs in Elkhart County. The coalition is bringing our resources together for training, information, and partnerships. And lastly, the proactive classroom lessons and discussions. Now that Al and Eric are pretty well familiar in their buildings, I want to take it a step further and have Al and Eric go into classrooms and have discussions about digital citizenship, de-escalation techniques, and pure conflict mediation. Any questions?
Chief, could you, I'm not sure everybody out in the
I'm
audience
sorry.
knows our, your friends you brought with you.
Ah, yes.
Introduce them.
Here we go. Eric Schuman, he's our high school SRO, and Al Dolinsky is our junior high SRO.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Going back to the case reports and stuff, I don't know if I don't know when the statistics are due, but what are you finding is the most common, lack of a better word, case? Is it fighting? Is it drug possession? What's the most common incident you're running into?
Yeah, I think it's probably close between THC possession of vapes and then the fighting with the battery or disorderly conduct charges that we seek after sometimes. So it's probably both of those are pretty equal.
And is that playing into, you talk about some of the things bringing into the classroom, you talk about conflict, resolution stuff. Is that kind of what's guiding those discussions? Or,
Absolutely.
how is that factoring into your plans?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The beginning of the year, I spoke with the entire junior high and high school student body. And I even started the year off with, trying to talk to everybody, the students wise, about de-escalation techniques and trying to find a better way to resolve some of the problems young people have in the schools, whether it's, hearing something on social media or having a conflict with a student inside the school. So this is going to be a perfect way to follow up that idea and give the kids more options.
Excellent, thank you.
So Chief Riddle, of the 135 case reports,
Mhm.
if our team wasn't doing that, who would do that? Dr. Molnar or
Well,
county?
no, it'd have to be a police officer because the reports that we file go straight to the prosecutor's office, and we have a working relationship with the prosecutor's office. And both myself, when Al and I were South Bend, and Eric can testify to, it's just a way of communicating with the prosecutor's office.
So if they were short, we would possibly have to wait.
Pardon me?
If we didn't have the Concord Police Department and they were short help,
Right, I
would
would.
be waiting.
You would be relying on either Elkhart County Sheriff's Office or possibly Elkhart Police Department to investigate those crimes. But then it will go into the whole conversation. If you have an incident at a school and you call for the police, then it goes into a call of service type of file when it goes to the dispatch center, and then who knows when a police officer would get to that call, depending on how severe is it. Got it.
Several years ago, if you recall, 10, they did a mock, one of the county schools did a mock, hey, we need you here right away. And the response time to get to that school was greater than 15 minutes. And I think you and I talked about, if you're at West Side and you need to get to East Side,
Right.
You're no more than, depending on traffic,
Right.
3 minutes away.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And to have Eric, in the high school, 95% of the time, and have Al in the junior high 95% of the time, it's that you can't. That's a really good response time.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you
Very
much.
good, thank you so much. That brings us to 4.3, a transportation department report. Dr. Kendall, thank you.
Yes,
You don't look like
Mr.
Josh.
Carlson.
Josh is sick.
He is homesick, so he has asked me to present in his place. So, wanted to give you guys an update on staffing. Right now, we're what's considered fully staffed. Unfortunately, though, when it comes to incidences where individuals get sick, we are relying on sub bus drivers and sub monitors, which is great if we had a plethora of them, but there's only so many that exist, and we actually borrow quite a few people from Cardinal buses, so if they're out and about, obviously we can't get to them. So quite often, our mechanics and our directors are filling in on routes, as well as our transportation secretary, just so that we can keep the flow going. So they're doing the best that they can. We have somebody in training, which is super awesome, but sometimes we get snags. So I always tell them, eat an orange and it'll be fine, don't get sick. All right, next up, special needs in McKinney-Vento. He wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that that need continues to grow. So when it comes to our special needs buses, those are separate from our other buses. So oftentimes there's a need to add to that bus fleet, just so that our students have access to school and that their needs can be met. Those are the buses where we have monitors, again, supporting students' safe transition to and from school. And then McKinney-Vento is our homeless students. So last that we counted, we're between like 55 and 60 students that we're servicing that aren't necessarily in permanent housing within our district. So that need continues to grow, and just providing that service to our students. Cost-cutting measures, we will be bringing you a contract at our next board meeting where we are seeking permission to enter into a fuel contract. So essentially what that allows us to do is to zero in on a specific price point. And it's weird how this all works, but essentially you want to zero in when the price obviously is low as opposed to high. But this is something quite a few counties do in order to save money on diesel, not on gas, but on diesel. And so you only sign the contract for like little segments. Again, it's all based on you want to get the best price that's out there in order to save money in the district. So look for that at our next meeting. Also, one thing when it comes to cost-cutting measures that I'm very proud of their work in is that we have cut overtime by quite a bit. And the way that that happens is being strategic. When you're fully staffed, you can be strategic about who you put out on the road so that we're staying within being smart about how we are using our funds. But also it's important to understand that we're still doing that while increasing access to field trips and sporting events or extracurriculars. So after COVID went away, it was weird to think like how robust our programming is because it had been so long. So we want to get the kids experiences, which causes us to need to put more buses on the road, but again, being strategic on how we spend money for those trips. Next up, student safety. I know Officer Riddle talked about this, but it is really important that we have access to a transportation only channel. That way it doesn't walk, here's the verbiage, so we don't walk on those that are in the building, so that should an emergency arise, there are no interruptions and we can get to people quick. So that's something that's really benefited our transportation department. And also, unfortunately, stop arm violations continue to increase. So Josh is pretty certain that this is going to become a mandate soon, but he wants to get ahead of the curve. There are certain safety lights, and there's a picture here that you can't tell. But anyways, there's lights that make it more visible to those that are driving, and so they don't put our students at risk. So he's already working on getting those installed on our buses ASAP. Also, one thing that our transportation directors are involved in is they're part of different, like I asked before, for example, different professional development communities so that they can get content to train our drivers and mechanics to keep them up to date. And then we also wanted to briefly, we've done quite a bit of research this fall on the different tier, like right now we're on a 4-tiered busing routing options, so all 4 building levels go out and come back on their own. So we wanted to do research as far as 3-tier is concerned. And so here are some pros and cons, and just understanding that with any change like this, there's positives, there's negatives. For example, if we were to go down to 3 tiers, then we'd have to combine 2 buildings, which might cause behaviors to go up. You're not able to help other routes. Like if something happens, you can't squeeze more kids onto the bus because they're already super full. And then when you look at the 4-tier options, again, pros and cons, better student management would be a positive because you only have 1 grade level on the bus at a time. Some of the cons is you are going out and back 4 different times. So again, if you want more information on that, I can get into that more specifically in the future, but we've done an extensive amount of research on this. All right, I think I covered everything that you wanted. Questions?
So are you thinking 3-tier versus 4-tier starting next year?
So it's just research we've done. We have no decision making yet on that. Just wanted to make sure that we researched any viable option.
After school events, sporting, we're going to Plymouth. Do our athletes get out of here on time so they can get there on time this year, or?
Yeah, we don't have a problem right now with getting students to contests on time. Should we, like, for some reason, if the school day was pushed back, then it would become more of an issue. But for the most part, we're in pretty good shape.
And then way out ahead of our ski summer school, are we looking at summer school transportation kind of?
So the aim is for, and that's another report that'll be coming up soon, but the aim is we will have summer school transportation, but being strategic about who's in summer school at one time so that you're not doubling up on route. So making sure that different sets of buildings are going at the same time, so it's 1 out and 1 back.
Got it. Okay. We did ask a bus driver about being a sub. It's not a GPS, it's a route book, if you will, and it's dark, so I drive, pick up a student, then have to go to the next one, turn left. So.
Do you know what those are called? Those are called left sheets and right sheets. I would hear them talk about it. Okay, I have to share this because I find it really intriguing. And they kept saying their left sheet and their right sheet. I'm like, how hard is it to make a seating chart? No, it's what they use when the subs are your left, you turn left, and you're right.
Yeah.
Get it? Did you guys already do that?
I did.
It was interesting, so anywho, okay.
It's dark and you're trying to run a route that you haven't.
Right, you have your left sheet, your right sheet.
Yeah.
Don't leave yet.
Oh.
So just want to be clear, we are not recommending any changes to our busing tiers at the moment. More wanted to share with you that we continue to try to find ways to save. Our transportation expenses come out of our operations account, which is where we're, especially in 2022, hopefully less so this next year, but lose to the circuit breaker. And so, like Lisa said, cut $80,000 in overtime costs, which is a good start, and we just continue to try to explore ways to save money. So.
And Dr. Kittle, you may or may not know, other districts, are they fully staffed? Are they about the same?
I don't really necessarily know for sure, but
Everybody's running
Same.
thin, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I think most places had to cancel routes before we had to do that for the first time a couple weeks ago. So.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. I hope Josh feels better. Okay, it's going to be the Dr. Molnar show here coming up. And first of all, we have an overnight trip request.
President Waite and Mr. Preston, members of the Board of Trustees. First issue I'm talking about, not really an issue, but seeking approval for an overnight trip. The Student Council is once again seeking approval to attend the annual Indiana Association of Student Council State Convention in Indianapolis. It's going to be held at the Marat in downtown Indy. This is something that we've done many, many, many years. It's a great opportunity for our Student Council, which we feel like we have a really robust and really dynamic Student Council to go down to the convention and network with other student councils, learn about leadership traits, and go through leadership seminars in addition to passing out awards that happens there as well. That would occur on, they would leave Thursday, March 9th in the evening, stay overnight, and they would head back Saturday afternoon. They would be staying at the Sleep Inn and Suites downtown. Oh, by the way, I'm presenting in Heather Bone's stead because she's at Faith Mission with our student council, working with giving back to the community as we talked about that. So,
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Mike, would you like to second?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion by Mrs. Davis, a second by Mr. Malooly. Any comments or questions for Dr. Molnar?
Dr. Mueller, is it just, I mean, seniors are gonna go, like, so
Yeah.
it's not just juniors, sophomores?
No, it's not that.
It's the whole.
It would take a lot more than Miss Sarah, Miss Bone if we took the entire.
Gotcha. Or no, I meant the student council seniors will go.
Yes.
Dobbs is gonna go and.
Oh, those people will have opportunities.
We're gonna be, I'm gonna be him.
I appreciate that Ms. Bone always wants to do this every year with the kids.
It
And
really
taking
is.
her time to do that, I appreciate that. And I know the kids do too.
They've come back and reported and they've looked at their experience and it's been great for them, so it's exciting.
We appreciate it, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Yoder?
Sure, yes.
Oh, Mr. Malooly, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think you might have already said, are they gonna come back and report at a future date?
They have in the past. We can ask and make
Be
sure.
more than willing to present, Mr. Malloy.
I would like that, thank you.
Mr. Malooly, your vote.
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Towner?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Waite, yes. Okay, that brings us to 5.2, Dr. Molnar.
So I'm really excited to speak about this hopeful program that we are looking at initiating. We are seeking approval of starting an alternative learning program here at Concord High School. This is a issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I've spent many years in alternative education, so I know the power and the benefits of alternative education for certain students. But through a lot of work with Dr. Kendall, myself, and Mrs. Tahara, we feel like we have the bones of a really great program that we hope to get approved first at this level, and then eventually take it to the IDOE to be a recognized alternative learning program through the IDOE. But the Concord Alternative Learning Program's focus is on providing students a safe and productive learning environment focused on academic, behavioral, and social supports in a non-traditional school setting. The program will not only help students experience success in working towards their graduation requirements, but also prepare students to be productive and responsible members of the community. Through a heavy reliance on pro-social skills and academic intervention, students will be equipped with the skills needed for a transition back to the traditional school setting and or a post-secondary career college experience. The Concord Alternative Learning Program will be considered part of the traditional high school with accreditation under the Concord High School. So folks, alternative education, if you look at the history of alternative education in this country, it has taken multiple forms since really the 1960s when it really became in vogue. It eventually evolved into this mindset of this is where bad kids go. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for an opportunity to find success for all of our students. What we've come to realize is that our building, our high school building, is a phenomenal building. And we offer many things for many students, and we do great work, and we achieve at a high level. But for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons that this could fall into, some students need something extra. They need some other opportunity, an alternative to the traditional brick and mortar that Concord High School provides. That's where the Concord Alternative Learning Program would step in. We're looking at providing supports to struggling students who just couldn't find success in the traditional school for whatever reason, and that could be a variety of reasons. The IDOE, to get approved, gives you 5 basic categories of students who might fit into an alternative setting, basically revolving around academics, students who are considering dropping out of high school. And that's number one. We don't want any student to drop out of high school. We want to make sure that we give those kids the opportunity to walk across that stage and I can give them that diploma at Notre Dame. Number one priority. Or a student that is falling behind academically and needs intensive academic supports. Also, students that in other cases excuse me, are needing to work to support their family and they need the flexibility an alternative learning program could provide. In my experience as being an alternative school principal, I've seen that more times, not in this district, but another district I worked in, and I've seen that firsthand. And the flexibility to provide to a student so they can get out into the workforce a little bit earlier and help support the family is a pretty powerful thing. In addition, there's the idea that there are students, because of behavioral concerns and because of choices that they've made, need an alternative setting as well. But there's a variety of reasons why you could potentially fit into alternative education. We're looking at starting with 9 through 12 with the hopes that we could eventually move to grades 6 through 8 in the future, but really concentrating on getting the high school program right first. How students would fit into this program, we would look at interventions through our intervention team or our multi-tiered systems of support. At our junior high and our high school, we have intervention teams where a group of teachers and admin and social workers and counselors work together to try to do tiered interventions for students that might need those, whether academic or behavioral, and at some point a alternative placement may be the recommendation from that group of educators. Also, the students that, because of due process or discipline, are facing expulsion, and in lieu of an expulsion or maybe coming back from an expulsion, could be placed in an alternative setting as part of their Form 16 or a behavioral contract they can be placed on. Or possibly a case conference decision that the smaller environment, the more intensive intervention that an alternative placement could provide might be the recommendation of the case conference. Addressing student needs, one of the great things about an alternative setting is, like I've mentioned, it is a smaller class setting. The state recommends a 15-to-1 student to teacher ratio. So with that ratio, you can really build relationships with kids, find out what they need, and really provide some intervention to get them on a path to success. Trauma-informed practitioners, culturally responsive practices, ACEs awareness. One of the great things about being in an alternative setting with these smaller types of settings, we can find ways to get ancillary supports in there, people who are aware of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, how those things can affect academic success, behavioral success. Behavioral interventions, behavior modifications, develop small classroom community based on a cohesive classroom culture that's going to lead to the sense of belonging. If you're familiar with the ACE study by Dr. Robert Anda, he was the guru that started ACEs. One of the biggest things that he found is that he called them core protective factors. And core protective factors are having a tie to an organization or a group or a thing that's bigger than yourself. It's one of the biggest X factors to help with at-risk students. I use that term loosely because I can fit a variety of different types of students, but what a smaller environment can do is help to build those core protective factors. I look on the panel and I see some people that were involved in sports and music, and those were some of the X factors that helped them find success in high school. A smaller environment can help build those core protective factors with those students to tie them to the school, that they feel like they're working for something bigger and better than themselves. It's one of the best things to overcome ACEs and build resiliency in kids. And then an intentional focus on pro-social skills. One thing that needs to happen in an alternative setting is we need to make sure that we are addressing some of the reasons why they were placed in an alternative setting to begin with. If it's just designed to get credit recovery or credits, we're not addressing the problem. You know, we have the ultimate hope that in an alternative placement, students could transition back to a traditional building. It may not happen. It may happen. But we want to be actively working on some of the issues or some of the choices that they made that got them there in the first place. So hopefully they could transition back, but if not, these are the students that are going to be entering our greater Elkhart community. Studies show that students that are placed in an alternative setting, the majority of students don't move more than 10 miles from where they went to high school. So these are the types of students that are going to be living in our communities 15 years from now. These are the kids that are going to be shopping next to us at Meyer. We need to make sure that we're building strong community members with them. So directing those interventions to those kids is going to be incredible. Do you have any questions for me?
I know a lot of juvenile court referrals come out of issues that usually arise in school, and so I'm glad to see that we're kind of addressing some of those risk factors, antisocial beliefs, antisocial behaviors, school issues, things like that. We're kind of addressing those issues. Hopefully, it's kind of a short circuit before it gets to the prosecutor's office or the court.
We have relationships currently with Basher Merit. What do we see? How does this impact those?
We would look at ending some of those. In certain cases, we may use certain entities on a singular basis, but overwhelmingly, this would replace a merit program.
I can chime in on that. I've already communicated with Superintendent Goshen that we would likely pull out of merit.
I knew that was one of our goals. And that's about, remind me how many students that is ish?
15
right now. 15. So we brought the other 40 last year, the year before. And
one thing that I can say about us having our own program, it gives us flexibility to work with our students. Merit's a fine program, but it's a Goshen program. And we're beholden to them on certain things and certain rules and restrictions that they have. This gives the opportunity for us to work with our kids and make sure that we're giving them what they need.
Would also add it eases the transportation burden of getting them to Goshen. So
very true.
Certainly, motion to approve as presented.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Yoder, a second by Mrs. Towner. I know we did comments and questions, but if there's any others.
You had mentioned, Dr. Mueller, in your experience in the past, some students do come back into the class. Is that a low number or?
It's a lower number, but being very intentional about that transition plan is key. That if there's a student, I've seen where students who have that goal of ultimately transitioning back to the traditional building, that we keep ties to the traditional building, that they're still working with the administration team at the traditional building, coming in, visiting with them, still connecting with teachers. So it doesn't feel like they're separated, and then really targeting some goals that they need to hit before they can transition back. And then we've seen it with great success, but it does take some work with some counselors and some of the staff at the alternative placement to make sure that happens.
My final question is, I know you're a planner, so you already have someone planned to kind of.
Well, I mean, there's been some talks.
Okay.
I wanted to not get the cart before the horse. And make sure I get approval first.
Sure.
You spoke about, connection to the greater good. I feel you answered this, but just to make sure that it's clear, can these students participate in our extracurriculars? Are these students also in our music program or football program? Can they participate in anything?
Not unless they were in the full program. Like an alternative setting is a 3-hour program with an online component or a work component, depending. So that's very typical with most alternative programs. But traditionally, these students, they're not really, I wouldn't say they're not interested, it's just there's a lot of things going on in their life that would prevent them from that, so we need to make sure we're addressing that first. And hey, if we can get them back to the traditional building, that might be one of the carrots that gets in there.
Any other? Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, do you have any idea of the approximate number of students that this would attract for Concord?
So we're going to start off with our 15 and go from there. It is really not a large number of students. It's not like we're going to have a huge number of students rotating into an alternative placement. But when you're one of those students who just, it's just not a right fit, you know, it could be really detrimental to that student and the learning environment. Also, we don't want to, there's a phrase in alternative ed, in the alternative ed circle, that you don't want it to be a dumping ground, you know, and that's not my words, it's just one of those phrases that gets thrown around. And I would echo that. I mean, we're going to be very intentional about who moves into the setting and the supports that we give, so it's not just getting kids out of the traditional learning environment and putting them into an alternative placement to become sort of a credit factory. That's not what we're looking for.
Anything else? Mr. Yoder?
I vote yes.
Mr. Malooly? Can you verbalize your thumbs up, please?
Now I can, yes.
Mrs. Towner?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Waite, myself, yes. Thank you, Dr. Molnar. And next, that brings us to 5.3, marching band credit.
So, really exciting stuff tonight. I'm glad to get to chat about some of these things. But seeking approval first to have the flexibility of using a marching band course as either a music elective or state required physical education or physical education 2 credit. This would give students who are in our marching band program an opportunity to get a required course out of the way. This is flexibility that has been exercised. The state gave us this flexibility a number of years ago, and there's a lot of schools that are doing this. Our marching band students and our music students tend to take a lot of music, and throughout their 4 years of high school, it kind of constricts their schedule. So if we can find some ways to give them some flexibility as we move from an 8-period day down to a 7, we're all for it. In addition, a lot of our music students take PE over the summer, and this would free some of those spots up so they could get these required courses out of the way.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second. Sorry, I was thinking of that question.
I have a motion by Mr. Yoder, a second by Mrs. Davis. Any comments or questions?
Okay, so traditionally we've had wellness, which is health and PE together.
They would still have to take the health
So
portion.
that was my next question. So whether it's, well, we're going to get to athletic credit next, the same thing. It's like, how do they, so we'll have kids who will have teachers only like, oh, we have a health class for those of you who did.
Yes,
took
well,
the
and
alternative. Okay.
we have a number of online health students right now for lack of staffing.
Okay.
This is going to help with that as well.
That's what,
They'll still have to take health.
yeah, that's what I figured. I just didn't know how you're going to address that.
This is long overdue.
Yes, it is.
I am so thankful for this. I know it's been chatter for years. Those kids, you know, work hard. And so that this is exciting. I heard you, did I hear you say music class or? So they need to decide if they're taking this
Yeah.
as a music credit or a,
Right.
so they need, that's
So
just,
they'll still have the opportunity to take it as a music elective, but if you're in your first couple of years, I wouldn't see why you would take it as your PE1 and your PE2. Get those out of the way.
very good. Thank you. Mr. Malooly.
I'm gonna ask a quick question. Obviously, I guess I'm gonna channel my inner Teddy Roosevelt here. One of the reasons for including physical education in the classroom is to kind of ensure a more well-rounded student. So, you know, obviously, marching band is a very physical activity in and of itself, especially for those tuba players. But my question is, are we covering any of the other elements of physical ed, like health, or, you know, like nutrition and I'm trying to think some other those things, but like some of those other things you're supposed to get in class that you might not necessarily by just saying, I'm taking marching band.
Most of those are covered in our health courses, not our PE courses. PE is more of kind of the lab portion of that, but the things that you kind of addressed, nutrition, living a healthy lifestyle, CPR, some of those types of aspects are covered in our health classes. So they won't lose any of those aspects. This is more of the physical side of the class.
There's a lot of character development.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. Yoder.
Yes.
Mr. Malooly.
Yes.
Mrs. Towner.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Tammy Waite, yes. Okay, Mr. Molnar.
Last
Same
one.
thing, different.
Yes, so on the flip side of that, which is also exciting, it's that we would like to offer essentially the same thing, but for our athletes. Athletes, again, state gave us this flexibility a number of years ago at the same time the marching band situation came up, and we would like to have our Concord athletes who have successfully completed a athletic season in good standing would be able to use their season as successful completion of a PE1 or a PE2 credit. Again, both state required courses. It would free them up for other pursuits and give them credit for the physical activity that they're obviously doing on the court, the mat, the football field, the baseball field, and so on and so forth.
I have a motion by Mrs. Towner, a second by Mrs. Davis. Any comments or questions? I guess I kind of have a little one, and I should have asked it, but what you just said now triggered it for marching band. When you said in good standing, how are we defining that, I guess, for both?
So with marching band, it's easier because it's an actual class.
Correct.
There's a grade tied to it, there's teachers tied to it. It's during the school day plus some time after.
Right.
So that's an easier one. We would just go through the requirements of marching band and treat it as a course. Athletics, we have a pretty well-beaten path of how a student finishes a season in good standing to get their athletic award. We would just use the same language that our athletic department already possesses in order for that to occur. They've already hammered that out as far as what the language is, as far as what a student needs to do in order to finish in good standing. And we would just mimic that language.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. Yoder.
Yes.
Mr. Malooly.
Yes.
Mrs. Towner.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis. Yes. Mrs. Waite, yes. Thank you, Dr. Molnar.
Thank you guys.
Go rest. That was a lot. That brings us to 6.1, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mrs. Wade. Let's see, get the screen up here. So much of this, at least some of this information, is information that you've already seen, but there'll be a few more pieces of information that I'll share that I haven't shared. Also, you'll notice that I removed a few slides from what I had originally uploaded. There was, I felt it got a little bit too busy. The slides are basically from previous years, so I think that maybe, hopefully, things will be a bit more clear when I present them this evening. So we'll present the 2022 financial year end and the 2023 budget order, looking at basically 4 funds that we'll review: the education fund, referendum fund, operations fund, and food service fund. Education fund, looking at basically a 5-year picture, looking back to 2018 through 2022, gives you kind of a little bit of historical comparison to look at the final numbers for the 12/31 and 7/31 cash balances. The next slide basically is the same information was shown on a graphical basis. So you can see that over the last few years, the cash balance has been increasing slightly in the education fund. Looking at the receipts versus expenditures, again, kind of a 5-year comparison between receipts versus expenditures, and certainly what we want to see are more receipts than expenditures, and so we feel good about the direction of that. Moving to the referendum fund, again, looking back to 2018 and then through the end of the year of 2022. Again, the graphical representation of that is interesting. As you know, going forward, that cash balance will continue to drop because if you look at the next slide, showing the receipts versus expenditures, even though there are not a lot of expenditures, there are even fewer receipts. So with that understanding, the expenditures will continue to show that receipts won't. So we'll continue to work with the board on the best way to spend that money on the needs as we go forward. Operations fund is, Mr. Fudson mentioned earlier, the fund that we have the challenge of the circuit breaker losses affecting that. But again, looking back to 2018 through 2022, you can see the difference in the ending cash balances over the years. And so we feel fortunate to have the cash balance in that fund that we currently have. And again, as Mr. Fudson mentioned, we're hopeful that the 2023 circuit breaker losses will not be as significant as they were in 2022, but we just don't know yet. Again, the graphical representation of the cash balances in the operations fund, and then receipts versus expenditures. And fortunately, our receipts the last few years have exceeded expenditures, and so that's something that we always have to keep an eye on. Appreciate, like Dr. Kittle mentioned in the transportation fund, a lot of people looking for ways to save money. Mr. Phillips with the maintenance, just everybody is kind of working together because the challenges of inflation, supply chain disruptions, and those kinds of things are things that show up pretty heavily in the operations fund. So it takes everybody kind of working together to make sure that we maximize the revenue that we have and minimize the expenditures. Food service fund is one that's probably changed the most. Again, a lot of that is due to changes that have taken place over the past few years because of the pandemic. And fortunately, that's been created some difficulties with some other funds. For the food service fund, there have been some difficulties, but there have been some additional funding opportunities that we've had because of the federal government's involvement that has helped us to kind of grow that cash balance. And so we feel pretty good about where that stands at this point, although there continue to be challenges. There probably will continue to be challenges as we move forward, but we'll take those as they come. Again, the graphical representation of the ending cash balances along with the receipts versus expenditures. Again, much of that is information that you've already seen, but now we'll start to look at the education to operations fund transfer. Again, looking at historically, the first year that happened was 2019, and as you can see, the transfer from the education fund to the operations fund that year was $3,848,976. And then that little 16.54 down in the bottom right-hand corner, what that number is the percentage of the 7,197,320 of the 43,518,216, which is that combined education and operations fund revenue versus the ending cash balance. So between those two, that's what that number is, and you see that in the next few slides. 2020, about the same transfer from Education Operations Fund, $3,775,000, and then that total cash balance for those two funds at 16.63%. 2021, the decision was made to begin to increase that transfer from the Education Fund to the Operations Fund, represented in a higher number of $4,891,724. But we were also able to grow that cash balance percentage from previous 16.63 to 18.89%. And then for 2022, again, pretty well maxed out the amount of money that we can transfer from the Education Fund to the Operations Fund, $5,980,000, which represents just under 15%. And then you can see the percentage of cash balance, 21.77%. And finally, the 2023 budget order. You can see the different funds: Education Fund operations, referendum, debt service, rainy day, main funds that are or will be funded by property taxes, as well as the Education Fund, which is our main fund is funded to the state. You can see the certified budget amount. That's our permission to spend. That's how much money the state says we get to spend to meet those fund needs. The certified AV comes into play with the operations fund, the referendum fund, if we were to have a levy, and debt service fund. The third column, the certified levy, you can see the operations fund and the debt service fund are the one funds we have on levy. And if you look down, if you follow that column on down, the 2023 totals of total levy between those two funds of $20,635,834 is lower than the 2022 levy of $21,684,735. Mr. President has mentioned in previous meetings with the strategic plan rollout that's something that we've worked hard on to make sure that that number is lower this year than it was last year for a variety of reasons, but I think it's important to kind of keep mentioning that and pointing out that our levy for 2023 will be lower than our levy was in 2022, not only the tax rate, but also the levy, which are the actual dollars that we receive to fund the operations fund.
We're going to tag team this, and so every opportunity we can get to talk about our budget and make sure people understand the moving parts, I think is important. So, Mr. Evans, if you could go up to slide number 3 really quick, and then I'll work my way down and just provide a little narrative to what Jim has been talking about here. Ending cash balance in 2022 in the education fund is $7.9 million, which is up from $6.694 million. That is intentional. So we have, I think, just short of $1 million in personnel costs right now that are being paid for out of federal stimulus dollars that have to come back into our education fund. And so that's part of the reason you see that increase is that we have been using that money to do that, to build up that balance. The other piece I would want to make sure the board remembers is we have about $800,000 in career center bills that are also being paid for from referendum expenses, which will eventually need to come back into this budget as well. And so while we've been working hard to make sure that our fiscal health is good, that's why that's happening there. Then if you go down to the operations fund on slide 9, you will notice that total receipts in 2021, 13 million, you'll see 11 million. And then Mr. Evans just got done talking about the transfer from the education fund to operations. So that includes that transfer. And so we're less money from property taxes, less revenue from that, but we've been using education fund dollars to fix that operations budget. And so just want to make sure that people understand that, oh, well, it doesn't look that bad, that's money that's coming out of the classroom. It's money that the district has historically used to fund programming for our kids. And so I just want to make sure people are aware of that. And then would just reiterate what Mr. Evans just discussed. Our 2022 transfer was just short of $6 million, which was 14.99%, and we're allowed up to 15%. So we are right at the maximum of being able to transfer those dollars. One concern we have right now, there's a bill in the House that was introduced, 1449, I believe.
1499.
Okay, from Representative Thompson, that would increase the circuit breaker loss from a 1% tax cap to a 0.9% tax cap. We've been lobbying hard, not across the board, for us in terms of a hold harmless for those of us, which I'm hearing we're the only district that chose to lower their levy. AV went up 12%, and we decreased the amount of taxes we're asking for. And so we're hoping for some hold harmless provision because we've been responsible. We've lowered taxes when we could be sitting here with a much higher tax rate than what we have for our taxpayers. And we have followed the rules, and we've worked hard to get us in good fiscal health. And then a bill's introduced that pulls the rug out from under us. And so just as you're talking to your representatives, that bill would be damaging to the district. So, did I miss anything?
No. That, just one follow on to that conversation, that is that, as I understand it, if that bill would have passed, it wouldn't affect the 2023 revenue, it would be 2024. But the other thing that does is it kind of throws planning for the future up in the air a little bit, because it makes those kinds of things more difficult. Especially when we don't know what our circuit breaker loss will be this year yet. We anticipate it will be lower, but we won't know that until later in the spring, maybe even closer to summertime. So,
that's a good point. I mean, the long-term planning piece of this, we're trying to long-term plan a facilities plan that keeps that tax rate low, keeps it where it is, and it's really hard to do that planning when they're changing the rules. So, sorry.
That's right. Any other questions?
I don't know necessarily a question, but I think it's another point to make sure that our community understands is that the lower we've been, community has come up to us and they were like assuming that the rate is lower because the referendum has fallen off. And that is not the case. This was very purposeful. This was very strategic. We purposefully, did this for our taxpayers, being responsible. This is not an automatic because the referendum has fallen off rate decrease. This is a chosen path that we have taken.
Absolutely, and as a board, you're to be commended for that number one interest in making sure that you are good stewards of the public money. At the same time, trying to balance all of the needs of the school corporation along with the needs of the taxpayer, and maximize the good that can happen for everyone.
That brings us to 7.1. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mrs. Wade. So tonight, we're going to ask for a redo, deduct change order. I'm ready to do this. Thank you, Steve. For the Engineering and Construction Center. So A couple of weeks ago, we brought the deduct to you. The amount is still the same, $195,942 or $42.28. What Steve did was he gave us a deduct. Early on, he gave us an $18,000 credit on some value engineering. Then he turned around and added that into the deduct, so he kind of tried to give it to us twice. So the only thing changing is the actual contract amount. It went from $3,732,856.90 to $3,750,917.72. So asking the board for approval on that.
Motion to approve the deduction. By Mr. Phillips. Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Davis, a second by Mrs. Towner. Any comments or questions for Mr. Phillips? Oops.
Oops.
Yeah. Oops.
So, do they have any mechanism, like, I mean, obviously mistakes happen, but are they like having another double
Yes.
eye on things like this in the future?
So once we approved that, then they did the final payout and the payment release. So when they were calculating that, that's when they found it on there. So I don't know who entered what where.
Right.
I just get it.
Right.
They were supposed to be here,
Yeah.
we let them off the hook.
But yeah, I mean, it would always be caught in that final.
Calculator got new battery. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Phillips? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Oh, no, sorry, bad habit. Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Mr. Malooly?
Yes.
Mrs. Towner?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Wade, yes. Okay, Mr. Phillips, you're here with us again for 7.2.
Yes, so some exciting news, got a little project coming up. So asking board permission tonight to advertise for boiler replacement at West Side. We did this project a couple years ago at East Side, and as you know, we put all those new unit ventilators in, and it'll be opportunity to dehumidify those classrooms a lot more efficiently. So we're excited to do this project. But we would like your permission to advertise.
Motion to approve the West Side protocol. As presented.
Second?
I have a motion by Mrs. Davis, a second by Mr. Yoder. Any comments or questions for Mr. Phillips? Hearing none, Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Mr. Malooly?
Yes.
Mrs. Towner?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Wade, yes. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Chief Riddle, 7.3.
Chief,
Oh.
everyone tonight.
Dr. Kendall.
I'm up here just to go over this briefly. We are asking for your permission to continue our agreement with the Sheriff's Department, providing jurisdiction for our school corporation police officers. So this is just renewal, so to speak.
Motion to approve. Go ahead. Motion to approve as presented. Second. We'll go right through it.
Okay, I have a motion by multiple, but Mr. Malooly, I'll let you give the motion. I have a second by Mrs. Davis. Any comments or questions for Dr. Kendall or Officer or Chief?
First is every year versus every couple of years.
It says every year, but with the change of a sheriff, you want to make sure that you have it updated. So we wanted to make sure it was updated.
Anything else?
Just to clarify.
Go ahead.
So basically, just to clarify, all this does is gives them essentially arrest powers outside of the Concord district.
Yes. that is correct, Mr. Malooly.
Thanks,
That was Tim Shelley.
Long yes. Anything else? Hearing none. Mr. Yoder?
Yes, please.
Mr. Malooly?
Yes.
Mrs. Towner?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Yes. Mrs. Wade? Yes. Thank you, Dr. Kendall. All right, Mr. Funston. That brings us to 7.4.
Yeah, so I'll take over the screen here real quick, and I won't take too long here. but through our strategic planning, we've been talking about being transparent, sharing data with our community as we look to grow reading scores, academic success, sense of student belonging, all the things that are a part of our strategic plan. And so bringing to you tonight, this is just an example of a dashboard. When I talk about it, I'm not sure, I just want to make sure people understand what we're looking at. But this is one in Oklahoma City that you can see over on the left. We, as a board, as a district, can decide, what we're going to provide available in a public dashboard, but it would be the things that are aligned to our strategic plan. We can have discipline data, attendance data, achievement data, as you can see listed over here on the left. We can have survey information, how parents are feeling about their school or the district, a lot of information. The world, it's really just endless, the opportunities for us to be transparent and to share these things in a public dashboard. And so this dashboard was actually created by Qualtrics, which is what I'm asking for permission for tonight, is to enter into a 5-year agreement with Qualtrics that would help us pull all that together each year. It really, as the data becomes available. So one of the things they do is they create the connection with all these different sources of information to pull it into calling them widgets. That's what you see there. But yeah, so thank you for whoever took me out for there. We would like to do a 5-year agreement because our strategic plan is 5 years. We don't want to have to mid-year change somebody else, and they gave us the same pricing for each year of the 5 years, so pricing won't go up on us. So we felt like that was a fair agreement. Of all the different partners that we investigated, they're the only ones that can do everything we want, and they can do it less expensively, cheaper than everybody else as well. So.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Yoder, a second by Mrs. Towner. Any comments or questions for Mr. Funston? Hearing none, I'm waiting for the delay. Yeah. Hearing none, Mr. Yoder.
Yes.
Mr. Malooly.
Yes.
Mrs. Towner.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Wade. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any sharing from the board? I feel like this meeting is.
I defer to Mr. Funston. How's that?
Sounds good. All right, superintendent's report.
Well, we had some successes this weekend. I'm sure everybody, a lot of people saw. But first, this is School Counselor Week, so if you get an opportunity to thank your school counselor, Lisa sent around some. What were those called today?
There are bundt cakes. They were, there were some left over, so we might have tried one, but they were great.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to share our thanks, but they wear a lot of hats depending on what time of year it is, and so I want to appreciate our counselors this week. Swimming and diving had a great performance on Saturday. A lot of us were there to root them on. I think we definitely have the best fans in the swimming world, but our girls handily won the sectional there. And in diving, we went first, second, and third, which was awesome. So wrestling, Lance Army and Armin Kaltukian both will be heading to the semi-state in Fort Wayne this weekend, and Armin was the regional champion this weekend, and it was wrestled the same person, and it was kind of a switch where he got a takedown late. So congratulations to them. And I don't know if you saw, but I think we had 4 other wrestlers who made it to the regional as well. And so good things happening with the wrestling program, getting better. And then I sent a link out today, but a lot of our band students played with the Elkhart Symphony today. I saw somebody familiar in that video as well, Mrs. Harold, and they have great things to say about our kids. And that's just great. So, other than that, I think that's it. I'm sure I forgot something, but
very good.
Science fair this weekend at CIS too. So,
will you go over upcoming board meeting schedule, please?
Yeah, so the next meeting is not on a Monday. We have midwinter break. So February 21st is a Tuesday. That meeting is earlier. It's at 4 o'clock. I think there's a ball game maybe. Just historically, we've always ran that meeting at 4, and it's worked out well. So we'll be doing that. And then back here on the 6th, we will have an executive session on March 6th to discuss staffing and staff performance. So.
Very good. Thank you, everybody who participated in this evening's meeting, and meeting adjourned at 7:25 p.m. Thanks, Mr. Malone.